Welcome to the install guide for the Floe RC CPU and RAM all-in-one cooler. I'm Jono and our builder today is Nick. We're using an AM4 motherboard today, but if you're using Intel, it's much the same and we'll be sure to let you know where it differs. But regardless of your chipset, you will be using the following items: the specific chipset block bracket, mounting hardware, non-conductive thermal pads, reversible backplate, RAM thermal pad, the included 2mm hex key plus 4 to 8 screws depending on how many RAM sticks you're using, the fan splitter, and finally, thermal paste. As Nick shows here, the backplate included with the Floe RC is reversible, with one side for AMD and the other side for Intel. Nick begins by applying the non-conductive pad to the side that says AMD on it. If you're running with Intel, simply flip it over to the other side and stick it on that side instead. Ensure you place the pad carefully in the center of the backplate. The thermal pad is to ensure there is no metal-on-metal contact with the motherboard and the backplate, so this is a pretty important step. Now it's time to grab the 4 long backplate screws. Mount these screws in the specific mounting pattern and location, which is determined by the chipset you're using. You can find this out by checking with the Floe RC manual. The screws have a flat side and a round side to their head, which ensures they stay in place, and it means you can't really install them wrong. Also, ensure to place a washer on the inside of the backplate, as this helps to lock the screw tightly and balances out the offset of the backplate. Now go ahead and install the other screws. Now place the backplate on the back side of the motherboard and be sure to have your standoffs at the ready. If you're not sure what they are, this is what they look like. Thread these onto the other side of the screws, ensuring they're on nice and snug. To know they're on properly, there should be no play once these slide onto the screws. You can now grab the Floe RC itself. It's time to get ready for mounting. To prep the CPU water block, first you need to get the chipset specific block bracket. Nick uses this one as it's for AMD. So remember to check you are using the right bracket for your chipset. Slide the bracket onto the CPU water block. This may take some effort and can be a bit finicky, so don't stress if it takes a bit of finagling. Now it's time for everyone's favorite part of the PC build, thermal paste. Apply it to the water block in your style of choice, and remember, a little goes a long way. Before placing the block onto the CPU, ensure you remove the protective sticker on the copper base plate. Align the water block and the attached bracket with the mounted screws we installed earlier to the base plate, and press down firmly. Once your block is on, grab the silver locking screws and screw them in with your fingers first, inserting them in a cross pattern to secure the block. Then grab a screwdriver and tighten all the screws again to finish the job. Now it's time for your memory. Just remember, the ToughRAM RC is the only memory currently compatible with the Floe RC due to the specifically designed mounting brackets. Install the ToughRAM RC memory into the designated slots on your motherboard. If you're not sure how to do that, we've got a motherboard how-to guide that you can see here. Nick installs 4 sticks of RAM here, but you can install the Floe RC with less if you desire. After you've popped your RAM into their slots, it's time to grab the RAM water block thermal pad. Peel the clear protector off one side and stick it in the middle of the RAM heat sinks. Then peel the other side off. To finally install the RAM water block, you will need the 2mm hex key and the screws. Maneuver the RAM water block atop your RAM and line it up with the mounting holes. Then screw in all of the hex screws and ensure they are nice and secure. After this, all that's left to do is screw your fans onto your radiator and then screw that into your case somewhere. If you want to know how to install an all-in-one, you can check out this video here. Now you are on to the final step, which is to hook up your RGB lighting and get some power to the Floe RC. You remember that 3-fan splitter Nick showed off earlier? Connect the female end to any 3 or 4 pin fan headers on your motherboard. Then connect your fan's power cable to the male end. To get the RGB lighting working, you're going to need to first daisy chain all the RGB headers to each other. If you have the 240mm version, you'll only need to plug one of these together. But if you have the 360mm version, there will be 2 to connect. Now grab the RGB controller. This allows you to select lighting modes, colors, and the speed of the effects of the RGB on your Floe RC and fans. Connect this up to your fans. Lastly, to add some power, go ahead and connect the SATA connector here to the SATA power cable from your power supply. Now you're all good to go. You have officially installed the Floe RC CPU and RAM all in one cooler. Thank you for watching the video, and I hope this how-to guide has been useful for you. To find out more about the Floe RC, check out our first look video on it right here. Remember to leave us a like and subscribe to our channel if you haven't already. We will see you in the next one.
I'm Sarah from Thermaltake Australia, and this is how to install an all-in-one water cooler. For this tutorial, we will be using our 240mm Water 3.0 AIO, and we'll be installing it onto an AMD CPU. Also, just remember that if you're using a different AIO or an Intel chip, your installation may differ in a few areas. First, begin by taking out all the parts. It's also a good idea to keep the installation guide handy so you can check with it when you need. In this tutorial, I'll be upgrading this PC's stock cooler with our Water 3.0. If this is also your situation, first use a screwdriver to remove the graphics card so you can have easier access to the motherboard. Now lie the system flat, as your next step will be to remove the stock cooler by loosening the screws which hold it in place. Next, use something like isopropyl alcohol and a cloth to remove all the old thermal paste from the CPU. The order of the next few sections is somewhat down to personal preference, but we think it best to start by placing the fans onto the radiator. First, determine which direction you want your fan cables to face, as you want them to travel the least amount of distance out to the back of your case to eventually plug in. You also want to decide which direction you want your AIO's tubes to run to the water block. Usually you want to keep them out of the way and ensure it won't clash with your back exhaust fan. Now, using the supplied longer screws, begin to screw in your fans. We've gone with screwing them in using a diamond pattern, but there really isn't a set order. Once both fans are secure, it's time to move on to the water block. This is where things will differ for you depending on your CPU and motherboard. If yours is an AM4 socket like mine, you're going to want to go with the circular bracket as shown. First, place this thumb screw through the upward part of the first bracket and then screw it into the loop. A good idea is to do it only up halfway, as the slack will be a lifesaver later. Thread this over the water block, ensuring the screwed on side is at the top. Next, grab this circular bracket and thread that over the water block too. Now this is where the fun/pain begins. You must line up the 4 sections with the first bracket and tuck them under it. Don't be worried if this takes a little while and causes a lot of frustration. A pro tip is to grab a flathead screwdriver and use that to help nudge them under, as they can be super finicky. You'll be able to tell once all 4 have slid under properly, as the brackets will be fixed in place around the water block. Now that nightmare is over, I'm taking off the back panel of my case to put in the back bracket, which came out when I removed the original stock cooler. You might not have to do this, but if you do, just remember that the brackets on the front need to be pointing away from the CPU. So now it's time for the actual installation. If you haven't already, release all the many wires from their cable ties. Figure out exactly where you want your radiator to eventually sit, as well as thinking about what the easiest path would be for your wires to travel out to the back of your case. Thread all your wires through, and then basically follow the wires to move your radiator up to where you will mount it. Now, using the smaller screws, screw it in. Lay your PC flat, as it's now time to put your water block on. There's no need to worry about thermal paste for any of our Thermaltake AIOs, as they all come with it pre-applied. Bring your water block down over your CPU, hitching the bottom over the bracket here, the that was installed earlier. You then do the same for the top. If you didn't screw the thumb screw all the way in earlier, hopefully this is easier for you than it may have been. Next, there are two cables coming from the water block itself to worry about. The smaller one connects to the pump fan header if your motherboard has one. If not, a system fan header will also work. The longer one you thread out the back with the other RGB cables. Now it's cable time! Separate all your power cables from your RGB ones just to make life a little easier. You can daisy chain up all the RGB cables by connecting them to one another. Then the single remaining cable goes into the back section here. Find the closest opening and thread the wires back through before inserting them into fan ports. Do a little cable management to tidy everything up. Tuck them away with it. And if you need to, put back in your GPU. And with that, you're done! You have successfully installed an AIO.
This area shows how many controllers are linked with the power supply. Make a quick selection. The selected fan's red light will come on. We can see this controller has 5 channels. Drag and drop the fan icon on the right side to match it up. Click Done to go on to the next section. Double-click the profile to enlarge the fan you are going to edit. You'll see 54 LED blocks that can be edited around 4 rings. You can choose your favorite color in the color palette zone on the right of the NeonMaker window, or by using the scroll bar to adjust the color codes. And click on the plus sign to create a new color profile, or drag the color to the trash bin to delete it if you don't like it. NeonMaker provides a selection of 12 basic colors to choose from. Single click or to hold on to the left button to fill in the fan profile, or to use Select All to fill in all fan profiles. There are 6 preset effects to access, which are Wave, Pulse, Tempo 1, Tempo 2, Motion, and Head Up. There are 3 Riing Quad Fans on the editing area. Choose Wave for the first, Pulse for the second, and Head Up for the third. Click Play to run effects. There are 6 functions. Select the fan and choose the color you would like to fill into a selected block. Then click Clockwise. The light will rotate clockwise. So now we can try counterclockwise. Choose another color to fill in a block. Click on counterclockwise. The color will go counterclockwise. Now, let's see rotate. Select yellow and click Rotate Plus. The LED will go from the outer ring to the inner ring. If you click on Rotate Minus, the color will go from the inner ring to the outer ring. Click Play to see the variation of LED alongside the rings. When using the gradual function, click the fan you want to edit. And on the timeline, you can add the colors you want by clicking the color palette on the right bar. The color block should appear on the timeline. To set them, click the color bar and then click on Gradual. You can also select all the blocks at once by dragging your mouse. Press play to see your effects. About Add Object function. Click a fan to enlarge the fan. Choose one color to fill in one of the blocks. When the Add Object is on, you can add any functions on the timeline. When the Add Object is off, the timeline of the third fan will be locked, and it can't be added with any new objects. The functions can only be switched within the existed objects. To change size of the blocks on the timeline, you can click the drop-down menu on the bottom left and edit the size of the blocks. The blocks can be dragged freely. Press Ctrl+C to copy the object, and if you want to delete the object, click on Delete. You can also zoom in and zoom out of the timeline by using your mouse wheel to scroll up and down. If you want to reset your controller, click the Return button. To open a previously saved file, click Open to search for a previously saved file. To save your current file, click Save. To learn more about hotkeys, click the Help button. Now, we're going to show you how to edit aqua effects on NeonMaker.
Hi there, I'm Nick, the PC builder here at Thermaltake Australia, and this is our how-to guide for making custom coolant colours. This is a great technique if you have a very specific colour you want for your coolant. Just remember that the ratios in this video won't necessarily be the best ratios for you. Everyone will need a different amount of coolant and concentrate in their system, depending on their loop. Today, I will be creating 4 different colours using our Thermaltake coolant concentrate bottles. These come in several colour options and mix easily to create all sorts of colours. You will first need something to mix your colours in. I tend to just mix them straight into the reservoir. If you are less confident, you could try mixing smaller amounts in a disposable plastic container first. I'm also using this Thermaltake P1000 coolant in the colour Pastel White. This makes a great base. Before you open the bottle, make sure you give it a good shake. If you're mixing in your reservoir like I am, you will need a funnel and some sort of attachment like this spare tubing to funnel the liquid in. Alternatively, you can use a squeeze bottle with a spout. Holding up the funnel, pour in the white coolant. Stop pouring just a bit away from the top. For the first colour, I will be creating pink. The concentrate used for this is purple. I put in about 7 drops in total, starting off with 3 and then adding in 4 more gradually until the colour matches what I want. Always add the drops in gradually, as it's much easier to strengthen the colour than dilute it. Shake up the reservoir to mix it in. If you are doing this in an already existing system, the pump will do this for you. You could also use something like a popsicle stick if you are mixing in a disposable container. We used this pink colour in our recent AH T600 build. The second colour I will be creating is teal. The concentrates used for this are blue and green. For this, I ended up adding 10 drops of green and 2 of blue, before finally adding in a 3rd blue drop. I added blue after green because blue is a much stronger colour, so it's much easier to reach the correct colour this way. Once again, just gradually add in drops until the colour is right for you. Don't forget to mix it up. For the 3rd colour, I will be making orange. The concentrate for this, surprise surprise, is orange. This colour took a little while to come through for me. I first added 4 drops, gave it a shake, and then added an additional 5. Finally, I added 6 more to make 15 drops total for the orange to really start to come through. This is why taking it slowly is so important, as you can slowly build the intensity of colour you are aiming for. Finally, the 4th colour I will be making is purple. The concentrates used for this are purple and blue. I'm adding this to the existing pink coolant, which already has 7 drops of purple concentrate in it. So, after the 7 drops of purple, add about 2 drops of blue. Shake it up, and all the colours combined will create a stunning purple. And that's it! Those were 4 custom coolant colours you can create yourself. There are tons of other amazing coolant colour creations you can discover too, so experiment and see what you can come up with. Thanks for watching! If you want to check out our other how-tos, like our tube bending video, or our breakdown of fittings to further aid you in creating your water-cooled build, check them out here. Like the video if you enjoyed it, and subscribe to the channel to see more from us. We'll see you next time.
Hello everyone, I'm Donnie from Thermaltake USA, and today I'm going to show you my take on building in our new micro ATX case, the V150 TG. I like to start by removing the case's panels, fans, and any accessory kits so I have an easier time installing my other components. For the motherboard, I'm using an ASRock B450 MAC, and I'll be pairing that with a Ryzen 5 3600 CPU. The cooler I'm using has its own mounting hardware, so I'm removing the motherboard's original backplate. To add a splash of color, I'm going to be using our 3000 MHz Tough RAM RGB. I'm installing 2 8GB sticks, giving me a total of 16 GB of memory. Before dropping in the motherboard, the rear I/O shield is installed to the case. Once I line up the mounting points to the standoffs, the motherboard is ready to be secured. I'm using the TH120 ARGB AIO to cool the CPU. It comes pre-installed with the Intel bracket, but it's very easy to swap to the AMD bracket. Because the TH120 has a metal backplate, I'll apply the provided sticker on the back of the motherboard to prevent shorting. This step is only necessary if you're using an AMD CPU. Thanks to the large motherboard tray cutout, mounting the backplate is super easy. A touch of thermal paste and the pump is ready to be installed. I decided to go with a push configuration for the radiator and mounted it to the front panel. This gave the AIO's tubing a natural wave and I was digging the look. I'm using 3 pure ARGB 120mm fans for the radiator, additional intake, and rear exhaust. The fan pack comes with a 3-to-1 PWM splitter, which is perfect because the motherboard only has 2 fan headers, with one already dedicated for the pump. I'll plug in the case's I/O connectors first before installing the graphics card. The case's power, reset, power LED, and HDD LED connectors are the smallest of the bunch, and no matter how many systems you build, they can be tedious to work with. Motherboards usually label or color code where each connector goes and in what orientation, but if you're confused where to connect each pin, check with the motherboard manual. A little tip for you guys, if the label on the connectors fade or you're not sure which side is the positive wire, on the other side of the connector will be a triangle, and that identifies the positive wire. To access the PCIe slot covers, the support brace can be slid back or removed completely. I'm using the Asus GTX 1660 Super. I think its length fits the overall look and power port lines up well with the lower grommet. For storage, I have a Seagate Barracuda SSD. I chose the lower SSD mount to consolidate and minimize exposed connectors. To install the SSD, 3 rubber washers with screws are applied to create a sled mount system, making it easy to remove and reinstall. For extra security, I used a 4th screw to lock in the SSD. Powering the system is our smart white 500-watt PSU. It is a non-modular power supply, so there will be some unused cables. But with some zip ties and the case's full-length PSU shroud, I will be able to bundle those unused cables and tuck them out of sight. With all the components installed, it's time to plug in the power cables. Starting with the CPU's 8-pin, motherboard's 24-pin, and the GPU's 8-pin. I zip-tied the additional PCIe connector to make sure it doesn't hit the GPU fan and for an overall cleaner look. Now with everything connected, I can pull the cable slack and start tidying up. I routed most of the cables along the edges of the case and tied them down. The 24-pin and SSD cables gave me a challenge, but I was able to settle on a look that I'm happy with. After a quick final check, it's finally time to put the case back together. That's it for my build in the V150TG. It was easy to put together and I really like the way it turned out. If you want to try your hand in building the system, we will have the product list in the video description.
Dive in with the DistroCase 350p offering D5 pump performance, removable motherboard tray for easy installs, and 360mm radiator support. Perfect for single loop configurations.
Hey everyone, Thermal Mike. And when you're planning for the future of your next build, take it to the next level with the DistroCase 350p by Thermaltake. Now that we've shown you some of the features, let's dive in and show you even more.
The 350p offers a removable motherboard tray, which I'm going to say is an amazing feature. This allows me to be able to install everything from my motherboard, all my components, everything right onto the motherboard tray, off of the case, protecting the acrylic. Great time to also install your power supply, and even the I/O panels and everything's all right there on the motherboard tray, so it's all basically done. Then you have some great storage options in the back for 3.5 and 2.5 drives as well. Going forward here, we'll get our power supply cables set up and get a general idea with our sleeve extensions just to see what kind of space we have, especially for our RGB. The 350p supports up to a 360mm radiator, and we went forward with a push-pull configuration here on the build. After that, we'll get our cables all routed down and around, and then get everything buttoned up in the back, and then move forward with getting our GPU installed and get ready for our tube work. Now it's time for my favorite part, the tube work. With this, we're going to be using our PETG 16mm OD tubing, and of course we're going to be tying that with our C-Pro fittings. The DistroCase 350P gives you 3 outlets in the center chamber for coolant going out, and then you also have 3 returns going back in the upper right. This allows you some creative options to be able to do some cool stuff with the tube work, and then of course you get a drain port and a fill port on the back. Now it's time to fill up the back of the case. That's right, I said the back of the case. The DistroCase 350P offers a unique way to do liquid cooling for custom single loop configurations. I'm just gonna leave the rest of this here for you guys to enjoy. Make sure to like and subscribe for more here from Thermaltake, and thanks for all your support.